Open it. Happy anniversary. 12 years early, 12 years late, I don't know. I just wanted to actually do it this time instead of just talking about it.
Daniel, we need to talk.
About the trip? I can change the dates if the kids have something at school.
Not about the trip. About us.
Okay. Should I be worried?
I already spoke to a lawyer.
You're joking. I just handed you Switzerland.
I'm not joking.
He spent a year planning what he thought was going to be the best trip of their marriage. What he didn't know was that his wife had already been planning something else entirely. And it had nothing to do with Switzerland. This is the story of Daniel Foster, and everything he uncovered in the 2 weeks after the dinner that was supposed to be a celebration. If you've ever handed someone the thing they said they always wanted, only to have it thrown back in your face in the same breath, you already know the exact weight sitting in Daniel's chest right now. And trust me, the folder isn't even the worst part of what he's about to find. Stick around, hit subscribe, because this story gets a lot darker before it gets better. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay next to a woman he'd shared a bed with for 12 years and felt like he was lying next to a stranger who'd learned to imitate his wife perfectly. The next morning, he found the passport applications by accident, buried in a drawer he was only searching because he wanted a stapler. 2 applications. One for Noah, one for Ava. Both already signed. Both requiring his consent as the children's father per the form's own instructions, unless a parent could prove sole authority. There, at the bottom of each form, was his signature. He stared at it for a long time. It was close enough to fool a clerk at a counter who processed 40 of these a day, not close enough to fool a man who had signed his own name 100,000 times in his life. "I didn't sign this," he said out loud, alone in the kitchen, his own voice sounding strange to him. He photographed both forms with his phone before putting them back exactly where he found them. That afternoon, he called Marcus. Marcus Reyes had been his business partner for 11 years, his best friend since college, the best man at his wedding. If there was one person Daniel trusted enough to call in a moment like this, it was Marcus. "Hey man," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice light. "Weird question. You still have contacts at that notary place near your office. I need someone to look at a signature for me." There was a pause on the line, half a second too long. "Yeah, sure," Marcus said. "What's going on?" "I'll explain when I see you," Daniel said. "Just, thanks." He hung up and sat with the phone in his hand, replaying that half-second pause over and over, unable to shake the feeling that something in Marcus's voice hadn't matched the words coming out of his mouth. 2 days later, Marcus showed up at the office unannounced, coffee in hand, acting like any other Tuesday. "So, what's this signature thing?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from Daniel's desk. "You had me worried." Daniel studied his oldest friend's face for a long moment before answering. "Someone forged my name on a legal document. I'm trying to figure out who." Something flickered behind Marcus's eyes. Small, quick, gone almost before Daniel could name it. "That's messed up. Any leads?" "A few," Daniel said, watching him carefully. You seem tense. I'm fine. Just, busy quarter. Marcus took a sip of his coffee, and Daniel noticed, for the first time in 11 years of friendship, that Marcus couldn't quite hold eye contact the way he always used to. "You'd tell me," Daniel said slowly, "if you knew something about this. Right? After everything, you'd tell me." Marcus forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Course I would, man. What kind of question is that?" Daniel let it go, for now, but he didn't forget the way Marcus's hand had tightened slightly around the coffee cup, or the extra half-second it took him to answer a question that should have needed no thought at all. That afternoon, doing what he always did, checking the shared financial dashboard between his logistics company and Elena's design firm, which ran under a combined LLC structure for tax purposes, Daniel noticed something that didn't belong. A line item, consulting fees, recurring monthly, wired to an offshore account under a company name he didn't recognize, Meridian Advisory Partners. He pulled up the registration. Meridian Advisory Partners was registered to Marcus Reyes. Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at the screen until the numbers blurred. His best friend, his business partner, his wife's design firm, quietly wiring money, nearly $40,000 over the last 8 months, into an offshore account controlled by the one man Daniel had trusted enough to call about a forged signature. He thought about every dinner Marcus had sat through at their table, every holiday, every late night at the office, when Marcus had covered for him so he could make it to Noah's basketball games. 11 years of trust, and somewhere inside all of it, this had been growing the whole time. Invisible, patient, waiting for the right moment to walk out the door with everything Daniel had spent a decade building. He didn't call Marcus this time. He called his aunt instead. Grace Foster had raised Daniel from the age of 9 after his parents died, and she had never once, in 37 years, softened a hard truth for his comfort. Sit down, she said, the moment he walked into her kitchen. "You've got that look." He told her everything. The trip, the lawyer, the forged signature, the offshore transfers, Marcus's half-second pause on the phone. Grace was quiet for a long time, longer than he'd ever seen her go without an opinion. "She called me," Grace finally said, "about 4 months ago." Daniel's stomach tightened. About what? She asked me, real casual, like she was just making conversation, whether I thought you'd fight to keep the kids in the country if things ever, quote, got complicated. Grace shook her head slowly. "I didn't think much of it at the time. I told her you'd never keep those kids from her, no matter what. I thought she was asking because she was scared of a custody fight. I didn't understand the question."
And now?
"And now?" "Now I think she wasn't asking about a custody fight, Daniel. I think she was asking whether you'd chase her across an ocean." The words hit him harder than the forged signature had. He'd assumed, all this time, that Elena wanted out of the marriage. He hadn't considered, until this exact moment, that she might want out of the country, with his children, and without him ever seeing it coming until the plane had already landed, somewhere he had no legal standing to follow. "Why didn't you call me the second she asked you that?" Daniel's voice cracked, something between anger and desperation. 4 months, Grace. 4 months you sat on this." "Because I didn't understand what she was really asking until you just told me about the passports," Grace said, her own voice sharper now, defensive. "You think I would have kept quiet if I'd known what she was planning? I raised you, Daniel. Those are my grandchildren as far as I'm concerned. I would have called you the same hour if I'd understood." Daniel pressed his palms against his eyes. I'm sorry. I know. I'm not angry at you. You're angry at everybody right now, and you've earned the right to be, Grace said, softer. But don't waste it on the wrong people. Save it for the 2 people who actually did this to you.
I wish
someone had told me sooner, he said quietly.
I
know, Grace said. I'm sorry, baby. I really am. Quick pause before we keep going. If you were Daniel right now, discovering a forged signature and an offshore account tied to your own best friend, would you confront them immediately or keep digging quietly first? Drop your answer in the comments and hit that like button if this story already has you gripping your phone, because it's about to get worse. That evening, Daniel found Noah in his room, headphones half on, a sketchbook open on his lap that he quickly flipped shut when his father walked in. "Hey, bud, got a minute?" Noah pulled his headphones down around his neck. "Yeah, what's up?" Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you noticed anything different about Mom lately?" Noah's face changed instantly, the particular stillness of a 15-year-old deciding whether to tell an adult something he's been carrying alone. "There's texts," Noah finally said, staring at his hands. "On her tablet. From Uncle Marcus." "What kind of texts?" "Not the kind between friends," Noah said, and his voice was tight with something between embarrassment and anger. "I saw them by accident. I wasn't looking for it. I saw it and I closed it and I never told anyone because I didn't know what I was even supposed to do with that." "Do you remember anything specific? Even a little helps." Noah hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "There was stuff about missing someone. Stuff about a place. I think it was Milan, or somewhere in Italy. And Mom said something like, 'Once the kids are settled, everything else will be easy.' I didn't get what that meant at the time. I think I get it now." Daniel felt something cold settle in his chest, confirming what half of him had already suspected, and the other half had been desperately hoping wasn't true. "How long have you known?" "Couple months," Noah admitted. "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't want to be the one who—" "Hey," Daniel gripped his son's shoulder. "None of this is on you. You understand me? None of it. You were 15 years old carrying something no 15-year-old should have to carry alone. That's on the adults in this house, not on you." "I kept thinking maybe I read it wrong," Noah said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it meant something else." "You didn't read it wrong," Daniel said gently. "But you did the right thing, telling me now instead of never telling me at all." Noah nodded, blinking fast. Later, Daniel found 8-year-old Ava at the kitchen table, coloring, humming to herself the way she always did when she was concentrating. "Hey, Peanut, what are you working on?" "A picture for Mom's new job," Ava said cheerfully, holding up a drawing of what looked like a lake with mountains behind it. "She's been practicing her Italian every night. She says it's for a new job. I wanted to draw her Italy." Daniel's mouth went dry. "Italy, huh? Did she say where in Italy?" "Milan," Ava said proudly, like she'd memorized it for a spelling test. "She says it a lot when she's on the phone." Daniel forced a smile for his daughter's sake, told her the drawing was beautiful, and then walked into the hallway and stood there for a full minute, hand pressed against the wall, putting the last pieces together. He walked back into their bedroom to grab his laptop charger and stopped cold in the doorway. Elena stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, voice low and warm in a way he hadn't heard directed at him in over a year. "I know. I miss you too." Once the paperwork's done here, none of this will matter anymore, she was saying, then turned and saw him standing there. Her face went white. She ended the call immediately. Daniel, don't, he said quietly. I don't want to hear whatever comes after my name right now. It's not what you think. Ava told me you've been learning Italian for a new job in Milan, Daniel said, his voice dangerously calm. Noah's seen the texts. I found the transfers to Marcus's account. So tell me, Elena, what exactly am I supposed to be thinking instead? She didn't answer. She just stood there, phone still in her hand, and for the first time since the night of the folder, Daniel saw something like fear cross her face. Not fear of losing him, he realized. Fear of being caught before the plan was finished. Marcus had a standing business contact in Milan. He'd mentioned it a dozen times over the years. Clients, contracts, potential expansion. Elena, learning Italian in secret, telling their 8-year-old it was for a new job. A forged signature on passport applications for both children. An offshore account under Marcus's name receiving Elena's design fees. This wasn't a marriage falling apart from neglect or distance. This was a plan. A quiet, deliberate, months-long plan to relocate his children across an ocean with a man Daniel had called his best friend, using money that had passed, unknowingly, through Daniel's own company. Daniel didn't scream. He didn't confront Elena in the kitchen or call Marcus to curse him out over the phone. He did what he always did when something in his business or his life needed fixing. He got quiet and he got precise. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, years ago, long before any of this. That anger felt satisfying for about 10 minutes and then cost you every advantage you'd built. Precision cost nothing and won everything. It was the same principle whether he was untangling a supply chain problem at 4 a.m. or untangling a marriage that had quietly become a stranger's plan for a different life entirely. The next morning, he called an immigration attorney. I need to file for a formal parental objection, Daniel told her, sitting across from a woman named Patricia in an office lined with law books. Something that legally prevents either of my children's passports from being used for international travel without my explicit, notarized consent going forward. Based on what you've told me, Patricia said, we can also flag the existing applications as fraudulent, given the signature discrepancy. That alone should freeze anything currently in process. Do it, today, if you can. I can have the objection filed by end of day. It won't be quiet, though. She'll be notified once it's processed. I know, Daniel said. I'm past caring about quiet where the kids are concerned. I just need it airtight. There's something else you should consider, Patricia added. Given the forged signature, we can also pursue this as a criminal matter, not just a civil one. Forgery on a federal document isn't a small thing. Daniel sat with that for a moment. Would that help the kids, or just hurt her? Both, potentially. It would strengthen your custody position significantly. It would also mean real consequences for her, beyond the divorce. File the objection today, Daniel said finally. Let me think about the rest. I don't want to make a decision like that out of anger. I want to make it because it's right for Noah and Ava. That's a good instinct to hold on to, Patricia said. A lot of people in your position lose that instinct fast. That same week, he sat down with his company's corporate lawyer and began the process of formally separating his logistics company's shared LLC structure from Elena's design firm, a process that had been convenient for years, and was now, he realized, the exact channel that had let money move somewhere he'd never approved. Once this goes through, his lawyer explained, her firm loses access to any shared accounts, shared credit lines, or shared banking relationships. She'll need to fully independently capitalize her business going forward. Good, Daniel said. I don't want a single dollar of mine touching whatever this has become. He didn't call Marcus. He didn't need to anymore. Instead, he had his lawyer send formal notice dissolving the informal partnership arrangement they'd operated under for years. The handshake deal that had let Marcus operate under Daniel's business insurance and use Daniel's client referral network without a formal contract. Because we're basically brothers, man. We don't need paperwork between us. They needed paperwork now. The unraveling didn't take long once the pieces were in motion. The passport objection blocked any international travel for the children immediately, which meant whatever timeline Elena and Marcus had been building toward, a quiet relocation to Milan, framed to the children as an exciting new adventure, collapsed the moment Patricia's filing went through. There was no version of the plan that worked anymore without Daniel's consent. And Daniel had made it very clear, through his attorney, that consent would not be coming. The offshore transfers, once flagged during a routine business audit triggered by the LLC separation, opened questions Elena's design firm couldn't easily answer. Clients, many of whom had come through referrals from Daniel's own logistics network over the years, favors built on years of trust, began quietly pulling their contracts once whispers of financial irregularities and conflict of interest started circulating through the small, tightly connected local business community. Elena tried calling a few of them herself, hoping her reputation would carry her through it the way it always had. It didn't. In a town this size, trust travels fast, and so does the loss of it. Marcus was forced out of the partnership entirely, his name removed from every shared filing, every joint account, every reference that had once tied his business to Daniel's. Word spread fast in an industry as small as theirs. A man doesn't quietly betray his best friend's marriage and expect the friendship's professional scaffolding to hold up once the truth comes out. Marcus came to the house once, near the end, standing on the porch like he still had a right to. Daniel, come on. 11 years. We can't even talk about this like adults? We could have, Daniel said, not opening the door any wider than necessary. 11 years ago, 6 months ago. Any point before you started wiring my wife's money into an offshore account so the two of you could disappear with my kids. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like, Marcus, because from where I'm standing, my best friend helped forge my signature on federal documents so he could take my children to another country with the woman I married. Explain to me the version where that's not exactly what it looks like. Marcus didn't have an answer. He never really did, not one that survived being said out loud. Get off my porch, Daniel said quietly, and closed the door. He stood there for a moment afterward, back against the wood, listening to Marcus's footsteps retreat down the porch steps and out to his car. There was no satisfaction in it, just the quiet, exhausted relief of a door finally closing on something that should have ended months earlier. Elena, for her part, tried once to explain herself. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she said, standing in the doorway of what used to be their shared home office, arms crossed, eyes red. I never meant to hurt the kids. You forged my signature to take them out of the country, Daniel said, his voice even, though something in his chest was anything but calm. You learned a new language in secret, so you'd have a cover story to tell an 8-year-old. Tell me which part of that wasn't meant to hurt them. I was scared you'd never let me go if you knew the truth. I would have let you go, Elena. I would have signed whatever you needed to sign for a divorce. What I would never have let go of is my children, quietly, on a plane, without me ever getting a say. He shook his head. You didn't need to plan an escape. You could have just talked to me. 12 years, and you decided a forged signature was easier than a conversation. I loved him before I even understood what I was feeling, Elena said, quieter now, almost to herself. I told myself for a year it was nothing. Then it stopped being nothing, and I didn't know how to undo it, so I just kept building around it instead. You didn't just build around it, Daniel said. You built an entire second life, a language, an offshore account, a forged signature on my children's passports. That's not falling in love, Elena. That's a plan. Plans take intention. Somewhere in the middle of falling for him, you made a choice, over and over, to keep lying to me instead of ending it. She didn't have an answer for that. She never really did. A year passed. Daniel never took the trip to Switzerland. The itinerary sat in a drawer somewhere, unused, a symbol of an anniversary that had turned out to be the beginning of the end rather than a celebration of what had lasted. He didn't mourn the trip itself. Somewhere in the last 12 months, Switzerland had stopped being about lakes and mountains and started being a reminder of exactly how much he hadn't known about the woman lying next to him every night. Instead, he put his energy into the lake cabin Grace had left him years earlier in her will. A modest, slightly run-down property he'd always meant to fix up and never found the time for. Now he found the time. He and the kids spent most weekends there, tearing out rotted floorboards, repainting the old dock, replacing the dock's warped boards one plank at a time with Noah's help, teaching Ava how to skip stones across the still morning water. This feels like the only place that's always the same, Ava told him one Saturday morning, sitting on the newly painted dock, feet dangling above the water. Daniel sat down beside her. What do you mean, Peanut? Everything else keeps changing, she said, with the plain, unfiltered honesty only an 8-year-old can manage. But the cabin's always just the cabin. It doesn't pretend to be something else. He put his arm around her and didn't trust himself to answer right away. Do you still miss Mom? Ava asked, looking out at the water instead of at him, the way kids do when they're asking something they're afraid of the answer to. Sometimes, Daniel admitted honestly. I miss the person I thought she was. That's a little different than missing who she actually turned out to be. Is that confusing? Every single day, he said, and she laughed a little, and somehow that made it easier to carry. Noah joined them a while later, sitting on Ava's other side, 3 sets of feet dangling over the same still water. Are we going to be okay? Noah asked, not looking at either of them, his voice careful in the way 15-year-olds get when they're asking something that matters more than they want to admit. Yeah, Daniel said, and for the first time since the night of the folder, he actually believed it when he said it. We're going to be more than okay. It's just going to take longer than we planned. That fall, Daniel started volunteering with a local business incubator he'd meant to get involved with for years, mentoring young entrepreneurs who reminded him, more than he expected, of himself 20 years earlier. Full of plans, short on the kind of hard-won caution that only comes from watching something you built get quietly hollowed out from the inside. How do you know when to trust a partner with something big? One of the young founders asked him after a session, clearly working through something of his own. Daniel thought about it honestly before answering. You watch what they do when nobody's checking, not what they say when you are. That's the only test that's ever told me the truth. Sounds like you learned that one the hard way, the young man said. The hardest way there is, Daniel said, but I'd rather learn it once, all the way through, than keep learning it in pieces for the rest of my life. One Saturday at the cabin, he sat with Noah on the dock, an old outboard motor disassembled between them, pieces laid out on a towel in careful order. Hand me the flathead, Daniel said. Noah passed it over. Why do you even want to fix this old thing? We could just buy a new one. Daniel worked the screwdriver into place, patient, unhurried. Because some things are worth keeping simple, he said. You strip it down, you see exactly what's broken, you fix that one piece, and it runs again. No hidden parts, no wiring you can't see. That's how you know it'll actually last, because there's nowhere for anything to hide. Noah considered that for a moment, watching his father's hands work. Is that supposed to be about the motor, or about, like, everything else? Daniel almost smiled. Smart kid. Both, I guess. Do you ever think about calling Uncle Marcus? Noah asked, surprising him. Like, not to be friends again, just to ask why. Daniel set the screwdriver down and thought about it honestly. I used to want to. For months I had this whole conversation planned out in my head, all the things I'd say to make him understand what he took from us. But I think some questions don't actually have answers that would satisfy you even if you got them. Sometimes the why doesn't matter as much as what you do next. That's kind of unsatisfying, Noah said. Yeah, Daniel admitted. Most true things are. They worked in comfortable silence after that, the lake calm and gold in the late afternoon light, Ava's laughter drifting up from where she was chasing something along the shoreline. Daniel reassembled the motor piece by piece, testing each connection before moving to the next, exactly the way he'd learned from his own father decades ago, back before Grace had raised him, back before he'd understood that some lessons take an entire lifetime to actually land. When the motor finally sputtered to life on the third pull, Noah let out a whoop that carried across the water, and Ava came running up the dock to see what the noise was about. Did you fix it? She asked, breathless. We fixed it, Daniel said, glancing at his son. Took the both of us. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel felt like he was building something that had no hidden parts left to find. Nothing buried, nothing wired somewhere he couldn't see, nothing pretending to be simpler than it actually was. Just a father, 2 kids, an old motor running clean again, and a lake that had never once lied to any of them. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a like, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done differently in Daniel's position? Would you have confronted Marcus the moment you heard that pause in his voice, or played it as patient as Daniel did? I read every single comment, and if you've ever had to rebuild trust from nothing after someone you loved broke it quietly instead of all at once, you're not alone in that. This one's for you. See you in the next story.